I always thought the deepest wounds came from strangers, people you barely knew, who came into your life like storms and left behind broken pieces. But I was wrong. The deepest cut came from my own blood, my family. It started with an invitation I never received. My younger sister Eliza was getting married. She was the baby of the family, everyone's darling, the one who could do no wrong. And me? I was the mistake no one wanted to acknowledge. At least that's how they made me feel. I'm Amara, 28 years old, quiet, bookish, and the kind of woman who knows how to hide pain behind polite smiles. I work as a freelance writer, live in a modest apartment downtown, and mind my own business. But I was once the golden child, until I broke a rule no one dared question. I fell in love with the wrong man. His name was Rayan. Older, charming, smart in a dangerous sort of way, and completely unsuitable according to my parents. They didn't care that he treated me with kindness when no one else did. They just saw a man from a different social class, a different world. Someone who didn't fit their polished image. I chose him anyway, and for that they chose to erase me. First came the cold silences, then the missed calls. Eventually, I was uninvited from family dinners. But the final blow came the day my cousin Zara sent me a photo. Eliza in a bridal dress, surrounded by our entire family. Smiling. Celebrating. Not a trace of me in sight. I wasn't just left out. I was deliberately deleted. First I cried. Not the dramatic kind of sobbing you see in movies, but the quiet, helpless kind that sneaks up on you when you're brushing your teeth or scrolling through photos you weren't in. I kept telling myself, they didn't mean it. Maybe it was a mistake. But deep down I knew. They didn't want me there. But what they didn't know was that I wasn't the same girl they cast aside years ago. Because the thing about being betrayed is, after a while it either breaks you or it shapes you into something sharper. And I had been sharpening myself in silence. Rayan never left my side. Even when my family forced me to choose, he held my hand through it all. We built a quiet life together. One that didn't need approval or validation. He encouraged me to start writing, to publish, to grow. He reminded me who I was beneath all that shame. So when I saw that wedding photo, when I saw how easily they all smiled without me, I didn't break. I changed my strategy. I decided to show them what it looked like when the forgotten daughter returned. Not with anger. Not with tears. But with power. Because revenge isn't always about destruction. Sometimes it's about reminding people what they threw away. A month later, I arrived back in my hometown for a quick visit, or so I said. What they didn't know was that I had planned everything, from my appearance to who I'd run into. I knew the wedding video premiere was being held at my uncle's house. Family, friends, neighbors, everyone would be there to relive the moments. And I was going to walk in with Rayan, confident, unbothered, stunning. But I didn't expect what happened next. Because the moment we walked in, everything stopped. The laughter, the chatter, the music. It all fell into a heavy silence. My father stood up from his seat, my mother's eyes widened, and Eliza's face turned pale. Rayan squeezed my hand. Ready? He whispered. I smiled. Let's give them a show. There's something about silence that's louder than words. Especially when it falls over a room full of people who pretended you no longer existed. As Rayan and I walked further into the wedding video premiere, the air thickened with tension. I could feel every pair of eyes on us, judging, analyzing, maybe even regretting. But I didn't flinch. Neither did he. His hand in mine was a quiet reminder that I was no longer the weak, hesitant girl who once begged her family to see her. But as we moved past the stares and fake smiles, something unexpected happened. From the far end of the room, a voice broke through the silence. Amara. It was a man's voice, gentle, disbelieving. I turned and for a second my breath caught in my throat. It was Zion. He looked the same and yet older, more serious, more refined. He had been my childhood best friend. The boy who once knew every corner of my heart before life got in the way. He used to be the safe place I ran to, the one who always believed in me. But when I fell in love with Rayan and my family turned on me, Zion vanished without a word. I had thought he chose their side. He walked toward me now, cautious, as if unsure I was real. I didn't know. They said you wouldn't come. I smiled politely, the kind you wear when your heart is twisting inside. Of course they did. Rayan glanced at me, quietly reading my face. I didn't have to say anything, he knew. He could always sense when ghosts from my past were trying to claw their way back into my life. Zion looked between us, then stepped back, visibly affected. "It's good to see you again," he said, voice softer. I nodded. "Is it?" He opened his mouth to answer, but my father's voice boomed over the speakers. "Let's begin." The lights dimmed. The wedding video started to play. But all I could think about was how quickly Zion had disappeared from my life when things got difficult. No call.
No explanación.
Nothing. And suddenly this moment, my carefully calculated entrance, wasn't just about confronting my family anymore. It was about confronting the parts of me that still hurt. The relationships that ended in silence. The questions that never got answered. I leaned into Rayan, who whispered, "You okay?" I nodded. "Just ghosts." He kissed my temple. "I'm here." As the video played, I watched scene after scene of my sister's life flashing on the screen. Eliza smiling, dancing, being the center of attention. My mother holding her close. My father giving a toast. Even Zara was there, crying happy tears. I wasn't in a single frame. My heart should have broken, but it didn't. Because somewhere inside me I had already buried that hope. What I hadn't buried, though, was the question that kept resurfacing. Why did they hate me so much for loving him? I glanced at Rayan. He was still the same man who gave up his pride to meet my father years ago, who tried to win them over, who endured their insults, who stood silently as they turned me into the villain. And yet he never once blamed me. That night after the party, we sat on the balcony of the hotel suite we'd rented. The city lights shimmered below us, and a soft breeze moved through the silence between us. Rayan finally asked, "Did you still want them to love you?" I stared at the skyline for a long moment.
No, iwis parat.
I just wanted them to remember I existed. He reached over, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "They don't deserve your pain." I laughed bitterly. "It's not about what they deserve. It's about what they stole from me." He leaned back, watching me. "You could still leave it all behind. We have our life. Our peace." I turned to face him, my voice low but certain. "You don't erase someone without consequences. And I want them to feel what it's like to lose something valuable. I want them to see who I became without them, and regret every second they didn't stand beside me." He took my hand again. "Then I'm with you. Just promise me one thing." "What?" "Don't lose yourself in revenge. You're too good for that." I looked into his eyes, steady, patient, the kind that carried love not just in words but in every unspoken moment. And I knew, this man wasn't just my partner in love. He was my anchor. Still, something stirred in me that night. A mix of love and anger, peace and unrest. Because now it wasn't just about the wedding. It was about the layers beneath it. The unspoken rules. The favoritism. The lies they told themselves to justify cutting me out. And Zion. Why was he there, acting surprised? What role did he really play in all this? There were still so many unanswered questions. And I intended to find every last answer before I walked away from this chapter of my life. For good, or for revenge. When someone from your past resurfaces, it's not always to apologize. Sometimes, it's to rewrite history in a way that makes them the hero. That's what I reminded myself as I read Zion's note again under the dim hotel light. You don't know the full story. Meet me tonight. Alone. Z. Rayan didn't say anything for a long while. He just looked at me, eyes steady but unreadable. He had always respected my space, but I knew this tested him. "You going to meet him?" he finally asked. "I don't know yet," I replied, though the truth was, I already knew I would. I needed answers. I needed to know why someone who once called me his best friend didn't stand by me when my entire world was collapsing. Rayan nodded slowly. "I trust you. Just be careful. Nostalgia has a way of clouding judgment." His words lingered as I got dressed later that evening. I wore something simple, a navy blue kurta with delicate embroidery, but I made sure to carry my confidence with me like armor. Because tonight wasn't about Zion. It was about closing a door that had been left open for far too long. We met at an old tea cafe near the lakeside, a place where we used to hang out as teenagers. The nostalgia hit me like a wave. Same wooden benches, same flickering lanterns. It felt like time had folded in on itself. Zion stood up when he saw me. He looked nervous. Thanks for coming, he said. I didn't come for tea. I came for the truth. He nodded, gesturing for me to sit. You deserve that. I sat across from him, arms crossed, defenses up. I wanted to call you, he began, so many times. But your father. He told me you didn't want to hear from me. That you'd moved on. That I'd only make things harder for you. I laughed coldly. And you believed him? I was young, Amara. I didn't know how deep it went. I thought maybe you'd found peace, and I didn't want to stir up old pain. You disappeared, Zion. Without a word. No explanation. You were the one person I thought would understand, and you walked away. His eyes filled with regret. I didn't walk away because I didn't care. I walked away because your family made it clear I wasn't welcome in your story anymore. They painted Rayanne as a monster and you as unstable. I didn't know what to believe. And now? I asked. Now I see how wrong they were. Watching you tonight, walking in like that, head held high, I realized what they'd lost. And I wanted to say I'm sorry. For not fighting harder. His words stirred something inside me. Not love. Not longing. Just grief for the friendship that could have been. For the way people let silence speak in place of courage. I don't need your guilt, I said softly. I needed your voice when mine was being drowned. He nodded, swallowing hard. They were scared of you, you know. I raised an eyebrow. Scared. You left. You chose your heart over their pride. You didn't crumble. You grew stronger. They don't know how to handle that. They still think love is something you sacrifice for appearances. I sat with his words for a while, watching the lanterns flicker in the breeze. Then I stood up. Goodbye, Zion. Wait, Amara, there's something else. I turned back slowly. Eliza didn't know they hadn't invited you. Your parents told her you declined the invitation. She found out the truth last week, and she was devastated. My heart stopped. She didn't know? No. She wanted you there. She fought for you. They told her you cut them off. That you didn't care. Suddenly, everything tilted. The wedding photo, the missing invitation, the cold stares. Was it all orchestrated to keep Eliza and me apart? And just like that, the real enemy came into focus. I rushed back to the hotel. Rayanne opened the door before I could even knock. You okay? I nodded breathlessly. They lied to her. My parents, they told her I refused to come. His jaw clenched. Of course they did. I need to talk to her, I said. She deserves to know the truth. He placed his hands gently on my shoulders. Then let's make sure she hears it, loud and clear. That night, I drafted a letter. Not an emotional rant. Not an attack. Just the truth. Every word carefully chosen, every lie dismantled with facts. I attached photos, messages, and timelines. I didn't want revenge anymore. I wanted clarity. I wanted Eliza to know the sister she thought abandoned her had been deliberately erased. We had it delivered to her house the next morning. And then we waited. Eliza was crying in my arms like a child who had just discovered the truth about the world. And it shattered her. They lied to me, she sobbed, her voice hoarse. They said you didn't want to come. They told me you cut them off, that you didn't care about me anymore. I held her tighter, my own throat tightening with a pain I had buried for years. I thought you didn't want me there, I whispered. I thought you'd chosen them. She pulled back just enough to look into my eyes, trembling. I would never have done that, Amara. You're my sister. You raised me when they didn't even notice I was in the room. The hotel room was quiet around us, but inside, my heart felt like it was cracking open all over again. Rayanne stood a few feet away, giving us space but watching everything, ready if I needed him. Eliza sat on the edge of the bed, wiping her face. I can't believe I let them twist the truth. I should have known something was off when you didn't even reply to my texts. They blocked your number from my phone, Eliza, I said. You weren't even allowed to reach me. She stared at me, stunned. Then her expression changed. It wasn't sadness anymore, it was anger. They used us against each other. For what? Bride? Control. For appearances, I said bitterly. For the illusion of a perfect family. A long silence stretched between us. Rayanne walked over and gently placed a glass of water in Eliza's hand. They feared Amara's strength, he said softly. She made a choice they couldn't manipulate. And that terrified them. Eliza looked up at him. They always said you were dangerous. Rayan gave a sad smile. Only to their illusions. That night, none of us slept. We stayed up talking, piecing together the lies, the gaps, the deliberate manipulation that tore two sisters apart. Eliza confessed how our parents used guilt and shame like weapons, how they made obedience seem like love and boundaries feel like betrayal. They told me you'd embarrass the family if you showed up, she whispered. That you'd make a scene, ruin my wedding. I laughed, hollow and tired. I just wanted to be there. Quietly. For you. The rage building in her eyes was something I had only ever seen in myself. But now she had it too. They don't get away with this, she said suddenly. I want everyone to know what they did. Everyone. Rayan and I exchanged a glance. I've already started sharing the truth, I said. I just didn't know if you'd be ready. I am now, Eliza said firmly. What happened next happened fast, almost too fast. The next day, Eliza posted a letter on her social media, along with a few photos of us from our childhood, and even a screenshot of my invitation history, empty. She didn't blame or shame. She simply told the truth. Her truth. Our truth. And then the phone calls started. My mother. My father. My aunt. Even distant relatives who never liked me to begin with. The rage, the excuses, the half-hearted apologies disguised as scolding. How dare you poison your sister's mind? You've humiliated this family publicly. After everything we did for you? But it was too late. The curtain had dropped. The performance was over. And I wasn't playing the quiet daughter anymore. Then came the final blow. We received an invitation to a private dinner. Just us and my parents. No crowd.
No noise.
Just one final attempt to talk. I almost declined. But Eliza insisted on going. I want to look them in the eyes when I tell them who I am now. The restaurant was high-end, cold in its elegance. My mother sat like a statue, her expression perfectly polite but her eyes tight with fury. My father barely acknowledged Rayan. He looked straight at Eliza and said, "This isn't who we raised you to be." "No," she replied calmly. "You raised me to be silent. I've unlearned that now." I wanted to be proud of her in that moment. But I was also bracing myself. Because I knew what was coming. My parents didn't beg. They didn't cry. They weaponized love with manipulation. This man, my father said, looking at Rayan like he was a virus, broke this family. Rayan remained silent. I broke the family? I said slowly. Or did you destroy it the moment you decided control mattered more than connection? You don't understand what it means to carry the family name. No, I cut in. You don't understand what it means to earn it. The air was razor sharp. My mother finally spoke. We won't be controlled by guilt, Amara. If you want to return to this family, you will do so on our terms. I looked at Rayan, at Eliza, and I realized I didn't want to return. Not to a cage. Not to a lie. I stood up. I didn't come here to return. I came to watch you realize you lost. Rayan stood with me. So did Eliza. Let's go, I said. We walked out together. 3 people who were no longer victims of a name but survivors of its weight. There's more to the story, Amara. Things you don't know about your past. About him. Her voice had dropped to a trembling whisper. But the weight of those words landed like thunder. Rayan stiffened beside me. I turned to face my mother. Her cold facade cracking just slightly around the eyes. For the first time in years she didn't look condescending or powerful. She looked scared. What are you talking about? I asked. She hesitated, then looked at my father as if asking for permission. He said nothing. Say it, I said again louder now. Rayan, she said carefully, eyes darting to him, was never supposed to find you. He came into your life for a reason. Not love. Not by chance. A storm of confusion passed over me. I looked at Rayan, who said nothing, his face unreadable. What is she talking about? I asked him, my voice barely holding steady. He didn't respond. And that silence spoke volumes. My heart dropped. You knew her? I asked him. Before we met? Rayan looked away. Not in the way she's suggesting. What way then? I demanded, my voice rising. My mother stepped forward now, her tone calm but deliberate. He was hired, years ago, by your uncle, to manage a failing property business. A side operation that required discretion. Your uncle told us about him, said he was smart, resourceful, but not someone we could trust. Then suddenly you were dating him. My throat went dry. You were investigating our family, she continued. At first, weren't you? Ryan finally spoke. Yes, but not for what she's implying. Your uncle ran a shadow business. Laundering, corruption, debt schemes. I was contracted to audit it, not destroy it. I didn't know you even existed back then. And when you did? I asked, heart pounding. He looked at me now. I stayed because I loved you. The room spun. I was never your assignment, I said, more to myself than to him. No, he said. You were never supposed to happen. I tried to leave the investigation. I told them it was a conflict of interest. But your uncle threatened me. Then your father joined in. I staggered back a step. Eliza looked between us, horrified. You mean all this time? No. Rayanne turned to her, then to me. Listen to me. I cut all ties with your family's dealings the moment I realized how toxic they were. That's why they turned on me. Not because I wasn't respectable, but because I knew too much. So what now? I said bitterly. You tell me you were part of the system that destroyed my life, and I'm just supposed to believe it was love. I chose you, he said, voice cracking. Against them. Against everything. That was never part of the plan. I didn't know what to feel. Betrayal? Heartache? Or was it just too much truth all at once? I turned to my parents. You ruined my life because of secrets? You were being used, my father snapped. And we were trying to protect you. No, I said. You were protecting your empire. Rayanne stepped forward, eyes on me. I was going to tell you. I just never found the right time. And that's the worst part, I whispered. You knew how they hurt me. You saw it. You stood by me. And you still didn't tell me the truth. Eliza was crying now too, her hand over her mouth. I can't believe this. I felt the room closing in. The people I loved, the life I built, the truth I fought to uncover. Everything was shifting under my feet. I walked toward the door. Where are you going? Rain asked. To remember who I am without all of you. And I left. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away. The streetlights blurred through the tears I refused to let fall. The betrayal, the truth, the layers of lies from my family, and now from Rayanne. It all pulsed like a wound ripped open too suddenly. For years I had fought to be seen, to be respected. And just when I believed I had finally found someone who stood beside me without conditions, I was reminded that even love could have shadows. My phone buzzed. Leanne. Again. I didn't answer. I found myself sitting on a cold bench outside the small library where I used to write. Funny. Back then it had been my hiding place. A quiet sanctuary when the noise of expectations got too loud. Now it felt like the only place where I could still hear myself think. Amara. His voice behind me startled me, but I didn't turn around. He sat beside me slowly, giving me space. How did you find me? I asked quietly. I know where you go when you need to breathe. I let that sink in. You lied to me. He shook his head. I didn't lie. I didn't tell. There's a difference. Terrible one, yes, but not the same. And why didn't you? I asked, finally looking at him. You had every chance to tell me the truth before I fell in love with you. Before you watched my family burn bridges and blamed it all on you. Before you became my safe place. He looked at me like a man unraveling. Because I wanted to believe I wasn't part of the problem. That what we had would erase everything before it. You don't erase the past, I said. You confront it. He nodded slowly. That's why I'm here. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. He handed it to me. This was never supposed to exist. But I wrote it the night I met you. In case I had to walk away. I never gave it to you because I stayed. With shaking hands I opened it. It was dated 2 years ago. A handwritten letter, raw and desperate. He had poured it all out. The assignment, his uncle's corruption, the conflict he felt when he met me. And finally, his decision to walk away from it all because he couldn't separate his job from his heart anymore. I kept this, he said, not as a lie but as a reminder that if I ever lost your trust, I had to fight with the whole truth. The letter was real, felt real, but my heart still ached. You broke something, I whispered. Even if you didn't mean to. I know. And I don't know if it'll ever be the same. I'm not asking you to forget. Or pretend. I'm asking you to decide. If the love was real enough to be worth rebuilding. I closed my eyes. The silence between us was deafening, but beneath it, something gentle stirred. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But recognition. Of all we'd been through. Of all he hadn't walked away from. I finally said, you chose me once. I'll choose you now, but only if you walk with me through every broken piece. His eyes filled and he nodded. Every step. No more shadows. I exhaled as if I'd been holding my breath for years. We sat there a while longer, not fixing anything, just feeling it. That was the start. A week later, I stood beside Eliza at the local women's conference where she'd asked me to speak. She had insisted on it, said the world needed to hear my story. Not as revenge, but as power. The auditorium was full of women, young, old, silent, broken, healing. I told them everything. How family can hurt you and still smile. How silence can be more violent than shouting. And how love, real love, doesn't ask you to shrink. After I stepped off stage, my parents were waiting in the hallway. Not with anger, but with something I never thought I'd see. Understanding. We listened, my father said quietly. My mother wiped at her eyes. We were wrong. I didn't respond with warmth, but I nodded. That was enough. Sometimes justice isn't dramatic. It's quiet. A single moment of being seen after years of being erased. That night, Rayan met me outside the venue. He didn't say anything. Just opened the passenger door, letting me in like it was day one all over again. We drove in silence. Peaceful.
Familiar.
When we pulled up to my apartment, he finally said, still walking with you. Still choosing you. And this time I reached over and took his hand. When that final message came through, your mother wasn't protecting your image. She was hiding your real father. It should have broken me. But by then I had learned that every truth, no matter how painful, is still power. I showed Rayan the message. He sat beside me in silence, the city lights flickering against the windshield. Do you want to know? He asked gently. I thought for a moment, then nodded. I've come this far. What's one more lie? The next morning, I confronted my mother alone. She didn't deny it. She simply sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cold cup of tea, and said, I was 18. I made a mistake. Your father knew but chose to raise you as his own. Until you stopped fitting his image of loyalty. That's when it changed. So everything, I whispered, everything I was punished for, wasn't even mine to carry. She met my eyes. You were a mirror, Amara. A reminder of the version of me I was told to bury. I should have been angry, but instead I felt a strange soft grief. Not just for what I had lost, but for what she had lost too. Her silence wasn't strength. It was fear disguised as survival. That's when I made the choice. I would no longer live out inherited shame. Later that day, I met Eliza at the same cafe where all of this started. We held hands over the table. Two sisters who had been torn apart by pride but stitched back together with truth. I'm proud of you, she said. You didn't just get revenge, you rebuilt yourself. Rayan joined us, quietly slipping into the seat beside me. His hand found mine under the table. We weren't perfect, but we were honest. And that meant more than anything else now. I didn't need the approval of a broken family. I didn't need to be part of a legacy that ran on silence, sacrifice, and show. I had built my own truth, brick by honest brick. That weekend, we launched our joint project, The Truth Table, an online platform for women to anonymously share their stories of family betrayal, manipulation, and emotional survival. Within days, it went viral. People weren't just reading, they were healing. Because stories aren't just entertainment. They're medicine. And mine? It had finally found its ending. My family didn't show up for me, so I showed up for myself. And in doing so, I became the kind of woman no one could ever erase again.